Welcome back everybody to a special episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're going to take an exclusive, never-before-seen look at Toy for Bob's Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time, and see how it compares to Vicarious Visions' Crash Bandicoot The Insane Trilogy. Now, for those of you that aren't as familiar with the series, Crash Bandicoot was first made by Naughty Dog for the PSX back in the 90s, and after several years, it was remade by Vicarious Visions, with much more modern visuals, while still retaining the level designs and general gameplay. Thanks to that trilogy's success, Activision is now taking things a step further, and has allowed Toys for Bob, the creators of Spyro Reignited, to take on a brand new adventure featuring the Orange Marsupial. But as you can probably already tell, Toys for Bob has introduced a few tweaks to the experience, both to the visual aesthetic and to the feel of the gameplay. So for today's video, I'm going to break down all of the changes that have been made so far to give you a rough idea of what to expect when the game releases on October 4th. Before we get started, bear in mind that the footage of Crash Bandicoot 4 is very much a work in progress, and anything we discuss today is subject to change by release. So I'm going to focus primarily on the changes that have been made to the gameplay design, but I'll be sure to provide an updated comparison that covers the visuals when the game officially releases in October. Also want to thank Activision and Toys for Bob for the opportunity to try out the game early. Alright, so to kick this comparison off, let's talk briefly about the game's presentation. Now right away, the first thing you're going to notice with Crash 4 is that it now features a new visual style. According to the developers, the goal with Crash 4 was to look closely at Naughty Dog's original visual style from the late 90s and build on that classic cartoon aesthetic. Because of this, the developers opted to steer clear of Insane's Alchemy engine, and instead rebuilt everything from the ground up using Unreal 4. This means there's no reused assets, animations, or effects in Crash Bandicoot 4. You'll notice that Crash himself has changed quite a bit since the last time we saw him. His nose is curved upwards a bit more, his eyes are more even, and his fur no longer sports that cool shader effect that made him look all fuzzy. But the character himself appears much more expressive now, with more stretchy animations that help to give the character more personality. Cortex's changes are even more drastic, as his head is now rounded out, and his hair isn't quite as zany as it used to look. These changes feel like they might be a bit much, as Cortex almost appears younger than he did before. Though considering this game's story has a lot of time traveling and alternate dimensions involved, maybe this was intentional. The environments are where we see some really nice improvements. No longer restricted by the level designs that Naughty Dog came up with over 20 years ago, Crash 4 features some great new settings. The two levels I was able to play were Snow Way Out, an icy fishing village inhabited by zombie fishermen, and Dino Dash, that looks like it was inspired by both the Crash Bandicoot Warped levels with the Triceratop chases, and the newer Crash Team Racing level that Beenox released last year. Like with the character models, a lot of the details in these level environments feel more stylized, often resulting in some more simplistic texture work. But the general scope and size of these environments is vastly improved over anything we've seen before. Each scene has these large sight lines with lots of activity in the background, like dinosaurs moving around, eating from the tops of trees, or fish jumping in and out of the water. There's just so much to see off to the side of the main path, and I love all the goofy little details thrown in, like these duck floaties sitting in the water. With the Insane Trilogy, you can tell Vicarious Visions were really limited in what they could show off. Each camera had to match up exactly with the original 90s source material, and because those games were designed to minimize the amount of detail on screen to save memory, you end up with these really tight spaces jam-packed with decoration. Crash 4 takes all that crazy detail and expands it outwards, and I found myself frequently distracted by all the environmental backdrops as I was maneuvering through the worlds. It's also worth noting that the lighting has seen some nice improvements too. I especially love the look of Dino Dash's introductory section, where you can see light rays pouring in through the trees, and Crash's shadow actually becomes sharper as you emerge into the sunlight, unlike the trilogy where the shadows are hard set based on the chosen level. The only issue I have with the visual design so far are some of the effects. While Crash has plenty of those classic unique death animations, I did notice things like the TNT and nitrous crates no longer behave the same way when you trigger them. In the original games, and the Insane Trilogy, detonating a TNT will cause Crash to disappear, leaving only his two shoes and some eyeballs in his place. But in Crash 4, the explosion just obliterates Crash completely. It's a minor change, but one that die-hard fans will probably pick up on right away. But as I said before, the game is still in development, so it could very well just be something that's not in this build of the game. So that being said, let's steer away from the graphical aspects of this game for now and instead focus on the gameplay mechanics. Crash Bandicoot 4 plays almost exactly like any of the classic Crash games. You can run, jump, spin attack, and the general goal of reaching the end of a linear level while collecting boxes remains the same. But there are a few interesting changes that Toys for Bob made to try and mix up the formula. First off, you've probably noticed that some of Crash's movement animations look a little bit different now. His running animation in particular almost feels like it's missing some of the frames during the loop. But despite this clear artistic change, Crash still moves and behaves exactly as you'd expect. You can still slide forward and jump for extra height, and crash down with a belly flop to smash open metal crates. Crash's moveset, in a way, feels almost exactly the same as it does in Crash Bandicoot 2. That means Crash's Wumpa Bazooka, Super Spin, Sprint, and Super Belly Flop are not available to use. However, the double jump ability has made a return, and can be chained together with the slide jump for even more height. The platforming feels incredibly tight and responsive, even more so than in the N. Sane Trilogy. And there's even a new yellow circle icon on the ground underneath Crash while he's airborne, which makes it easier to judge where he'll land, especially when he's jumping towards and away from the screen. Then of course, there's the new Tiki Masks. In the original Crash Bandicoot games, you can smash open a box with a Tiki Mask on it to spawn Aku Aku, a floating guardian that gives the player an extra hit point. Aku Aku does return in Crash 4, though he isn't quite as common as he was before, and I rarely found any crates containing him. He also circles around you now, kind of like how he behaves in Crash Team Racing, probably as a way to help players more easily recognize him when there's a lot of stuff happening in the background. But the changes made to Aku Aku are nothing compared to the new Tiki Masks. Crash 4's biggest new feature are these new mask abilities that give Crash the power to directly manipulate the environment throughout portions of the levels. In Snow Way Out, players are given the power to slow down time. This ability gets a lot of use throughout the course of the level, with lots of clever platforming challenges mixed in that leave very little room for error. Challenges include hitting timed exclamation crates that will trigger outline crates to appear for a short while, or running across nitrous crates that won't detonate until the slowdown effect wears off. The other mask I had a chance to play around with allows players to toggle certain objects in and out of existence, which I'm sure will create plenty of challenging areas in the later half of the game. Then, we have the new rail grinding ability. This looks like a mechanic taken straight from Sonic Adventures or Ratchet & Clank. While the rail I was able to use in the demo was relatively short and simple, I can definitely see this mechanic getting a lot of use in the later stages, especially considering you can also lean to the left and right, likely to dodge obstacles or to hit off-center boxes. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the collectibles. Like N. Sane Trilogy, Crash 4 tasks players with breaking a set number of boxes in each level in order to collect a special gem at the end. But Crash 4 introduces even more to the mix. Wumpa Fruit, for example, now counts towards a special prize all on its own, meaning you're going to need to be a lot more careful about smashing open those bouncing crates. To make this process a little bit easier, Wumpa Fruit now automatically gravitates towards Crash when he gets close enough, which I think is a nice change as you no longer need to awkwardly jump repeatedly into the air to grab floating fruit. The question mark crates have also been replaced with a new Golden Fruit crate that bundles a bunch of Wumpa into one big pear-looking fruit. Crash 4 also introduces a Dangerous Fire crate that will repeatedly spit out fire from all angles, forcing you to carefully time your attack. Then of course, there's the Crash crates, that in the Retro mode grant your typical extra lives, but in the new Modern mode are eliminated entirely, giving players unlimited attempts without the risk of a game over screen. And for newcomers to the series, I definitely recommend this new Easy Modern mode, because if this demo is any indication, Crash 4 is looking like it might be one of the most challenging games in the entire series. The new mask powers, combined with Crash's default abilities, make for some really challenging obstacles. And trying to collect all the crates, secret gems, Wumpa Fruit, and staying under 3 deaths to get the bonus gems is going to take quite a bit more effort than anything in the N. Sane Trilogy. Things really start to heat up with this next major change. Crash 4 lets you play as Dr. Neo Cortex himself. Now, unlike Coco from the N. Sane Trilogy, Cortex's movement controls are significantly different from what you're used to. He isn't nearly as nimble as Crash, and therefore can't do things like slide or double jump. To make up for this, he can dash to the side a predetermined distance, and can use his ray gun to transform enemies into platforms, either solid or jello to reach higher areas. Cortex's platforming is incredibly awkward and difficult to get used to, and you're going to need to master his abilities in order to collect all the crates, while also simultaneously dodging deadly obstacles. These Cortex levels are offered as bonus levels throughout the game, and will appear on your world map as you progress further. They're actually a lot like the gem paths in the older games, where you can replay a level after discovering a gem to complete an optional, more challenging section that wasn't available previously. And in the Cortex level I played, I ran into something really interesting. Cortex's path eventually links up with Crash's path, and a cutscene will play revealing a fun interaction between the two. According to a developer at Toys for Bob, the game is loaded with these little moments, often accompanied by Crash looking confused as to what just happened. And the idea behind it was to give repeat playthroughs of older levels a little bit more substance, with more of a narrative spin. And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, Crash Bandicoot 4 plays a lot more faithfully to the classic trilogy than I expected. Sure, the art style isn't quite the same, but the gameplay feels exactly like a true Crash Bandicoot experience, as if Naughty Dog themselves had made it. But Toys for Bob has added their own twist to the experience, with a higher difficulty curve, new collectibles, and the game-changing Tiki masks that will surely make for some unique and challenging level designs. But what do you guys think? Are you happy with the direction the developers are taking with Crash 4, or do you prefer the design of the N. Sane Trilogy? Let me know in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.